All right, Dr. Cooper, shall we officially begin?
We shall.
All right, make sure I got this in speaker view. Okay, so welcome everyone. Not to be too redundant, you won't hear much from me after these first welcoming remarks. My name is Dylan Stafford. I'm the Assistant Dean of the Fully Employed MBA program at UCLA Anderson. I'm one of your co-hosts tonight. I'm your MC. And I can't believe we started this Leadership Lab series on April 28th. It seems like a lifetime ago. I think COVID years are like dog years. You know, 1 week in COVID life is like 7 weeks in normal life. So for those of you who were admitted earlier in the year in the David Geffen School of Medicine, in the Fielding School of Public Health, or in the Anderson School of Management, if you were admitted earlier in the year, welcome back. If you've been admitted recently, welcome to UCLA. Everyone, welcome to UCLA. This is a multi-year interdisciplinary initiative that we are offering for you tonight. We have a wonderful team. Sarika, Liz, Elisa, and myself represent three of the big programs at UCLA: medicine, public health, and management. And we're not the only ones on the team, but you know, we're kind of carrying the torch along with Dr. Cooper that I'll introduce on the next slide. But we're just thrilled to have you joining us. You've got 1, 2, 3, 3.5 months before your graduate experience at UCLA begins. You've chosen well. UCLA is the #1 public research university in the world. You know, the University of California system, us in Berkeley as the flagships of that system. You know, 2 months ago, we were wrestling with, wow, you are the people who are going to solve the next pandemic. That's really what it was for me. Like, these aren't just future doctors and future health professionals and future management experts. These are the generation that will deal with the next pandemic. What seems like not that long ago and yet a lifetime ago, April 28th. And now you very same human beings are also the people who are going to help our society figure out, you know, how are we going to have a level of social justice? How are we going to have an inclusive society? How are we going to have an equitable society? So, you know, you're not just graduate students. You are the leaders that the world has been waiting for. And this conversation is just a little foreshadowing of the transformative journey that each of you is embarking on over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years of study at UCLA. And we want to prime the pump. We want to put some wind under your sails, and we want to make a difference for you right here in the next 2 hours that we're together that can support you this summer, such that you can have the very best first quarter of graduate school ever, and really just exceed your own very high expectations. Because, you know, we know the kind of people who get admitted to UCLA are the people who know how to set goals and achieve them, and we respect and honor that. So that's enough out of me. I just want you to know I love you. You guys are going to build the world that my kids get to inherit, and I appreciate that, and I thank you for that. Thank you for trusting UCLA. You've made a wise choice. And I'll be kind of in the background going forward. I would like to introduce my co-hosts, starting with my normally neighbor down the hall, but now, of course, we're co-hosting from across town. I'd like to welcome Sarika, Dr. Sarika Thakur, who will also say some words of welcome. Sarika.
Hi, everyone. So thank you all for being here. You know, like Dylan said, this has been a really interesting time in history with the pandemic and, you know, the civil protests and unrest happening lately. So just want to thank you guys. Leadership could not be more important than it is now, and look forward to going on this journey with all of you.
Thank you, Sarika. Sarika is one of those, you know, you need friends at work that you can like stick your head in the door and say, can I ask you a question? And Sarika is definitely my collaborator and co-creator within Anderson. I really appreciate getting to work with Sarika. And
likewise.
And with Sarika's social network, my network now also includes Liz Izquierdo, who's become a friend of mine over the last 18 months or so. Liz, would you like to welcome on behalf of Fielding?
Yes. Thank you, Dylan, and thank you, Sarika. On behalf of the Fielding School of Public Health, I'd just like to welcome all of our admitted students that are here tonight. I think these last few sessions have been just great, and the timing couldn't be better for us to really talk about tonight what inspires us, what motivates us, what really lights the fuel in what we want to do in our career. And I couldn't think of a more perfect person to lead our discussion, to Dr. Kush Cooper tonight. So our goal is that you take bits and pieces of what you learned about tonight, like Dylan mentioned, and apply it to your leadership, because you'll be the people that'll be making these changes and really speaking for those voices that can't be heard. So thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Liz. And my newest friend from across campus is Elisa Lopez, who has the honor of steering one of the very important parts of our university, of course, the David Geffen School of Medicine. And Elisa, would you like to welcome from your side of campus?
Yes, thank you so much, Dylan. So good to be here again for our final leadership lab. Leadership is so important at this time. And certainly as you look to begin a graduate program and pursue advanced studies, leadership takes center stage in no matter what area you're studying or what you're looking to do going forward. So as Dylan mentioned, certainly we are looking to you as the leaders of the future. And you have your work cut out for you, but we have programs that will help you along the way. So we hope tonight also will get you thinking and get you started on your way with the program. So thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, Elisa. Okay, with no further ado, we'll move to our next slide, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Kush Cooper. Professor Cooper is an adjunct professor, recently promoted, and a champion for social justice. Kush is, if I had a daughter, which I don't, I would want my daughter to grow up to be just like Kush. And Kush is what I like to call my sister from another mister. We've been working together since 2015 when we met in an interdisciplinary leadership conversation. I actually took her course, Being a Leader in the Effective Exercise of Leadership, which is a full quarter-length course that she teaches in the Luskin School of Public Affairs. And I took that course in the winter quarter of 2016. And tonight's conversation is a tiny little extract from that much larger course. But she is a voice and a champion for people who don't have a voice and who need champions. Her specific commitment is in the area of LGBTQ children, specifically children in foster care. And she frequently is in Sacramento talking to the voices who pull the levers and turn the knobs of our state, advocating, championing, asking for resources, mapping out better pathways forward. And every time I listen to Dr. Cooper, I learn something. And with no further ado, I would like to introduce us all this evening to the presenter who will guide tonight's conversation, Dr. Kush Cooper.
Thank you. Thank you, Dylan, for that really, really wonderful really, you know, and I just want to say back to you, working with you over the last 3 years has been sort of a dream come true. As a social worker, particularly somebody who does organizational development for the nonprofit area. You know, a strong partnership with the for-profit area is something that I think is a lever to pull and a knob to turn, so we can have a structure that is more equitable, yet gets results also. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the last lab. You know, Dylan told you, you know, my pedigree. I think what really there is to know about me is I'm a social worker by trade. And when I used to work in the group homes 20 years ago, I used to run a group home. And when I told the youth, you know, in what my academic career was, they would say, "Oh, Kush, you went all the way." And so, you know, I have gone all the way, and I have looked a lot of places for approaches to cultivating leadership that are reliable, right? Reliably just cultivates leaders. And this is the one I've landed on. So And when I say this, I mean an ontological phenomenological model. And here, by ontological, so ontology is the study of being. So this approach looks at, well, what is the being of being a leader? Just like, and a corollary inquiry is, well, what this human being business, right? What do they mean by being? So that's the ontology part. And then phenomenological means as lived, first person, happening right now, right? So it's the study of the being of leadership as it manifests itself in life right now. That's ontological phenomenological. So this is the third of 3 sessions, and I'll show you what we've covered and where we're going to go today. But before that, we have, as Dylan promised, a poll.
All right, so let me unmute. So I am going to launch the first poll, and we want to get a sense of, this, what we're asking is, where are you around the world? So where were you living before UCLA? And this should be pretty self-explanatory. So I've even got an other category. So I'm going to open this poll, and let's just get a sense of the breadth of global background that will be joining us this fall here on campus. All right, a few more people and we will have a full vote. All right, well, it's 50% Los Angeles. Interesting. All right. If I end the polling now, I think I can show you that. There we go. All right, do you see the answers? Are they showing, Kush? All right,
Yes,
so
they are.
I see 50% the greater LA area, 18% Southern California, not Los Angeles, 14% are our neighbors from up north, 13% from the rest of the United States, and then, okay, 1%, 1%, 1%, Europe, Asia, or Africa, and 3% from our friends in either Mexico or Canada. All right, can I stop that and give it back to you?
Okay. There, for those of you that have been at the past 2 labs, this is a little bit of repetition, so please bear with me. But it's a good refresher about how to listen today. Okay, and so there's 3 aspects of your listening that I'd like to underline. One is that you want to pull the conversation to you, right? Wherever you are, there in your seat, you want to pull it to you and apply it to your life, right? It's really easy to have me be television, especially now that I am television, in a little rectangle in front of you. And to the degree that you can be looking at your life while I'm talking, you'll get the most value. Right? So that's one, pull the conversation to you. Secondly, listen newly. So a lot of the words that we'll use today and some of the concepts may sound familiar. And we have a human tendency to go, oh, I get it. This is like that. Right? And I would invite you to try and avoid doing that today. And so that is related to leadership, that is related to how people act, and everything that you bring, you can have back, right? But we'll do what the philosophers call bracketing. And so you're going to take all that you brought, all your prior knowledge about leader and leadership, and you're going to put brackets around it, and you're going to put it aside, right? And you're going to have it back in about in a couple hours, okay? But for now, just listen newly, like you don't know. So that's one. Beginner's mind is what the Zen masters call it. And then this is related to the first item, but don't try and figure out what I'm saying, right? To understand it, to and part of understanding is trying to make it like something else. That'll be the consolation prize, right? So if you do, I mean, you can if you'd like, but that'll be the consolation prize for today. What will create the value is, again, looking in your life, not thinking about what I say, not trying to understand what I say. Just look and verify for yourself if it resonates. Okay, so those are 3 aspects of how I'd like you to listen today. Okay, so session 1, we covered, and I'm going to pull all this together later, so I'm just going to recap the topics. Session 1, we talked about leadership beginning with leading yourself. If you can't lead yourself, what makes you think you can lead others? We talked about what makes extraordinary leaders extraordinary. We talked about 2 ways to approach life. One is in the stands, describing and talking about it. And one is on the court, playing the game itself, playing the game of life itself. So we distinguished those 2 dimensions. And then we talked about the power of context and how context is decisive in that it colors and shapes how we view the world and the situations that we find ourselves in. Session 2, we embarked on what I call the 4 fundamentals of the way of being of a leader. We've observed lots of leaders, and these 4 just keep coming up over and over and over. So that's integrity. Hold on one second. The 4 fundamentals. So integrity it's in the center of that word cloud there. We spent the entire of session 2 on integrity. Then today we're going to complete talking about the other 3. And those are authenticity, being in action by something bigger than yourself, being cause in the matter. So those are the 4 fundamentals. And then I'm going to tie all of the topics together in a sort of coherent narrative that you can take with you. Anything else my team would like to say before we sort of get into the meat of it?
I just wanted to give a reminder that the leadership lab sessions from session 1 and session 2, the recordings will come out along with session 3. I'll send it an email hopefully tomorrow.
Thank you, Sarika. Yeah, and Kush, I just wanted to add, that we have those recordings if you want to go back and watch 1 and 2. And for everybody, this is the start of the odyssey of graduate school and the discovery, just the value of discovering what kind of leader do I know myself to be now? Where am I comfortable being a leader? Where are the edges of my leadership? Where do I find myself? Ooh, I don't want to be a leader in that situation. But looking at my forthcoming graduate opportunity as a laboratory, literally a laboratory in my own life. Because you can be the smartest doctor in the room, but if you don't raise your hand, nobody gets to follow the direction you want to lead into. And same thing with health, same thing with management. So just to not relate tonight, like not to relate tonight to tonight, like, oh, this is a class and I have to get it right, but really Socratic method, just, the questions are more valuable than the answers. So just, enjoy the conversation tonight. be willing to just peek around the corners and start to see those things about yourself you haven't seen yet.
Thank you, Dylan. Thank you, Sarka. All right, so here we go. So, this is probably a tagline for this entire series, which is leadership begins with leading yourself. Right? If you can't lead yourself, you can't lead others. So we're gonna have you start with leading you, so that you will be equipped to lead others. And the dry run, you could say, for leading you is preparation for grad school. So this is a John Wooden quote, a pretty famous one: failure to prepare is preparing to fail. And if preparing for graduate school is your dry run, what is a really effective and empowering context inside of which we can have you prepare? So we asked you all to, in session 1, we asked you all the question, when does your UCLA graduate degree begin? And we asked you to answer in 2 ways. From a default context, like the automatic answer is, well, yeah, it starts at orientation, right? That's when your degree starts, when school starts, right? However, we distinguished something called a created context, right? That replaces a default context and empowers the action forward for a leader and those they are leading. And so if you answer that question from a created context, that your graduate degree begins now, right? I assert that your way of being and acting will be distinct from the context that my grad school starts in September, right? If something is starting now, you're preparing like it's starting now. If something is happening in September, you put it off, right? So being authentic is the second of the 4 fundamentals that we're going to get into today. So what am I talking about when I say be authentic? Well, this is the definition that we're using. And I'll just read it to you. Being authentic is being and acting consistent with who you hold yourself out to be for others, including who you allow others to hold you to be, by the way, and who you hold yourself to be for yourself. Okay, so acting consistent with how you hold yourself. Right? That's our definition of authenticity. Now, we've talked about that none of these fundamentals are positive. I mean, are normative, in that there's no good or bad, right? They're positive. They just are. Integrity's that way. Authenticity's that way. Gravity's that way. These are they just are. It's not good that there's gravity. There is gravity. However, if you don't account for it, there are some consequences. And that's the same thing with integrity and authenticity. You don't account for them, why it's not good or bad, there are consequences, particularly in leadership situations. So, it follows from that while it's not good to have integrity or not good to be authentic, like there's no medal coming, we do find it's required to be a leader. Those folks that lead effectively do display these ways of being. So, to be human is to be inauthentic. Okay, so that's the bad news. All right, to be human is to be inauthentic. Right. The problem is that we think of ourselves as authentic. Right, and there's where the trouble begins. We're consistently inauthentic in certain ways in certain situations. I'm not saying you're either authentic all the time in every situation or you're not. But there are instances that if you look in your life, and the example I like to give is you know, Santa Claus, right? I mean, that's in a way being authentic, right? Being inauthentic. So we all do it. And then we get further into trouble because then at all costs we avoid confronting those inauthenticities that we and the next person have, right? So now we're inauthentic about being inauthentic, right? So, and you know, if you're inauthentic and you don't know that you're inauthentic, I call that fooling yourself about fooling yourself. All right, so let's just start now with a level set, right? We are all inauthentic. Dylan, Sarika, Elisa, Elizabeth, me, all inauthentic. Why do we do it? Why is everyone inauthentic or drawn to inauthenticity? This is why. Look, we all want to be admired, or we want to be seen as loyal, or we want to be seen as someone attractive, right? Somebody that people want to be around. And so we think inauthenticity is a small price to pay, right? It's a small price to pay for not being cast out of the group, right? Because, I mean, think about it. You know, back in the olden days, if you were not part of the group, it's likely you're not going to survive, right? We are social animals. We rely on each other to coexist and to survive. So if we're not seen as admired or loyal or attractive, then we might not survive, right? That's the mechanism. So while we're all inauthentic, right, and we, you know, and we can understand why, right? This inauthenticity does cost us in power, right? And when I say power, I mean the ability to achieve results with velocity, all right? It costs us power that's required to be a leader and to exercise leadership in authenticity. That's all. So it's not good, it's not bad. It does cost you power. So if you want to have maximum power as a leader, right, you're gonna need the courage and the grace and the sense of humor needed to be clear with people when you're strong, when you're wrong, you made a mistake, you acted stupid, you made an irrational decision, you were naive about something, any of that, right? You're gonna need courage to be straight about it. So, okay, so that's what we're all inauthentic, but you're probably waiting to hear, well, how do I become authentic then in those situations where I am inauthentic and leadership is required of me? Well, this is step one. You've got to recognize your inauthenticities. You got to recognize where you're pretending. Like, oh, I see, I'm pretending like I've got it all together, right? So I'm not asking this question, right? And now I don't know what to do. Wow, like that's really inauthentic, right? I don't know what to do. I'm pretending like I do, and so I don't get the help I need. Right? You won't like it initially, right? You won't like seeing disloyal or unattractive or, you know, whatever comes up when you see your inauthenticities. I mean, they're in many ways weaknesses, right? And you're sharing them with people. However, sharing those, and I know it's counterintuitive. Really, if I tell on myself, people will follow me more effectively? Yes. Turns out that when you share your inauthenticity, you get powerful opportunities for leadership. So the way to say that is that being authentic about your inauthenticities is the pathway to authenticity. Be authentic about your inauthenticities. So we're going to send you out into one of your breakouts. And here's what you're going to do. So I recommend if you have a phone, you snap a picture of the slide, because you can't see the slide when you're in your breakout rooms. So we want you to get together, introduce yourselves, of course, and then sort of name an area in your life where your being and acting is not consistent with who you hold yourself out to be. Okay, you're holding yourself out to be X, but your actions and the way you are isn't reflecting that. Okay, so that's one thing to discuss. And it'd be ideal to actually apply that inquiry to grad school preparation, right? And then where can you bring authenticity, right? Where, i.e., be authentic about your inauthenticity in that area. What might it look like, right? So that's what you're going to do. So I'll give you an example. So I hold myself out to be someone who is open to coaching folks and mentoring folks and being there for folks, particularly my students. And there have been times where I have refused because everything else that's going on. I have lots of good excuses, but I have gone ahead and denied those opportunities, right, for folks when they have come up. So that's inauthentic, right? I say I'm out to coach folks, but then coaching opportunities come up and I decline them because of whatever I have going on. Okay, so that's where and how you want to look. So before we send them off, anything else, team members? Oh. And all right, here we go. And so you're going to go to your breakout rooms. There's going to be a minute or so where it's sending you there. So there'll be a little glitch. So it's okay. Those of you that haven't done the Zoom breakout room before. And then you'll find yourself with your group. And then you'll get a signal about 60 seconds before they end. So when you get the signal, start wrapping up, because otherwise it's going to be like a crash landing. Like somebody's going to be in the middle of the sentence and boom, you'll be back in the big session.
And Kush, what's the total time they'll be in the breakout room? Did we tell them that? I may have missed it.
But 15 minutes.
Okay, 15 minutes. So just, self-pace yourself within your group. You're going to be groups of about 4. So, about 3 to 4 minutes a person. If somebody wants to be timer, just to make sure everybody gets a chance to speak and share the space. And,
It'll be 12 minutes this time.
Oh, 12.
Okay.
Sorry.
Perfect. Okay, 12 minutes for this. And nobody knows you. This is a brand new chapter of your life. You can say some things you haven't said here. Discover something for yourself. Have fun with this. This is a laboratory. This is a safe laboratory. This is UCLA. So enjoy.
And then just to introduce themselves really quickly before they begin to everybody in their groups.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ryan.
Everybody made it to a breakout room?
Yep, they're getting there. I'm just making sure no one's by themselves.
I'm wondering if the high propensity of people in greater LA is because we have a lot of FEMBA and EMBA students who already live here. We may be skewing the footprint a little bit.
A lot of students also are from California, the majority.
Yeah.
More than half.
That might, I thought that was a good question, but maybe there'd be a different way to kind of elicit more of the global perspective of our citizenry. But
Ryan, it looks like we still have a few people who have yet to join a room.
Yeah, I see Matthew.
Sahar, Rich,
Bigger.
Justin, Dongho, and Andre.
all right, Kush, I think we have everyone back.
Yes.
Okay, so good job. You've just experienced your first breakout of tonight. You'll get to meet and have some follow-up conversations with those same folks, and we even have some people just getting off work just joining us. So there might even be a new person or two in your group. And remember, Kush said that this is what people do. All of us, we try to put our best self forward, and sometimes we are inauthentic as we do that. So I hope you had some opportunity to test out a little bit, being vulnerable and sharing a little bit with these new future classmates of yours from UCLA. So now we're going to do a follow-on poll to that exercise, and we've given you some choices of what's your favorite way of being inauthentic. So this is all anonymous, so you can just pick your favorite one. I'm going to launch the second poll, and we'll see what we say here. Let's see. I got to relaunch, continue. And here we go. All right, here we go. Sometimes I am inauthentic because I want to look good to people around me. Which looking good is my favorite? I want people to think that I am admirable, smart, loyal, that I got it together, that I'm funny, that I'm caring, that I'm hardworking. You may have something that's not on this list, but see if any of these call to you. Speak to your heart. You have 83%, 87%, 91%, 92%. Couple more folks. Oh, finally, we got a loyal. I was hoping someone wanted to be seen as loyal. That's a good thing. I like loyal.
What's yours, Dylan?
Loyal. I'm like an old, I don't know, like that puppy dog who follows you around. I just, it's a Southern thing, I think. I am loyal. It's a good trait in a husband, but sometimes I get sort of in a rut when times are changing and I need to adjust. All right, I think we got 95, 96% of the people voting. Okay, I'm 10 seconds. All right, we're ending the polling. We are sharing the results.
Having it together.
All right.
I think that's
my MBA students. MBA students, we have it together.
Well, that and, it would make sense in terms of the sample, right? Together, smart and hardworking rule the day. And that's what you would expect as the looking goods that folks who just got accepted to grad school might have.
That's it. That is it.
Yep. And if you took the full class, we'd have a conversation around like, well, I mean, these are all good things, right? Yes. But you can have too much of a good thing, as they say, right? And they can be limiting, right? If that's the card you play all the time, right? That's the card you play all the time. It's very limiting. Very good.
All right, back to you, Kush.
Okay, so I think we have, let me close this window. I think we have a little time, so let me see if folks, have sort of a question about this, like or have something really interesting that they noticed that they'd like to sort of check out the validity of with me, or they have a question, or they have a challenge. Who'd like to share a bit? And you don't have to.
Would you like people to raise their little blue hand, or how should we?
Yes, yes.
So if you would like to share something, just raise your hand and we'll call on you. Or if you have, what about, what if?
Or they could also post it in chat.
They could, yes. And we'll have time at the end. So, if you're not quite ready, you're not. I just want to give folks an opportunity, since we do have the time, and this conversation is fresh. Any hands, team, or should we forge on?
Margarita, please.
Please, Margarita.
Hello, everyone. So I've just recently got promoted into managerial role, and as an industrial engineer, I always thought I'd be the type of leader that would always be on the shop floor, always working with people, learning what their problems are and fixing them. But due to unrealistic expectations and what managers do, I've got swamped with all of the inventory reviews and P&L reviews and what you don't see managers doing. So I definitely feel like I'm not being authentic to what I was held myself up to be when I was beginning this journey. And I think the way I can bring this to grad school is have maybe realistic expectations of what's to come, given me seeing the full picture, not just what's on the surface. So that's kind of my experience.
It's very good. That's brilliant. Right, so that's what we call looking, right? What Margarita's doing, she's looking. She's not developing a model out of what I'm saying. She's really looking, like, where? Well done. And if I may, Margarita, about the inauthenticity, is there something you could do about that? And you don't have to, again. Is there something you could do about that at your place of work, do you think?
Yes, definitely. So actually I'm blocking off every other day an hour that I'm coming in early and actually spending time on the shop floor, working with my new employees and learning about the products. Actually, I'm putting in a little bit more time outside of my regular hours to make sure I'm connecting with the people and showing who I really am.
That's great. And as something you might try, so that's great. And something you might try is actually sharing how you had been inauthentic, right? You all might be wondering where I've been after I said this whole big spiel about how I wanted to be connected and be on the factory floor with you and all that. And here I was doing managerial things and I completely forgot about that. And I want to recommit to being here with you all. Those are the kinds of conversations that people go, wow, okay, that person's human. I want to be led by a human, by a robot, right? Very good. Thank you, Margarita. Could probably do one more. We have time for one more if folks have a question or a insight.
Kush, I think you got one from Kelsey through the chat that may have gone to you. I think she was trying to send it to you.
Okay, Kelsey. All right, let me.
I can read it. I can read it out.
Oh,
loud.
yeah. If you could read it,
Or Kelsey, would you like to ask it? Can you unmute?
Or do you want to tell us not to ask it? I guess because it's in the chat.
Sure, I'm glad to ask it. Yeah, so
Okay,
I was wondering if the function of inauthenticity could be, clearly it can be negative, but can it be positive and perhaps in the workplace, but also in other just general homogenous cultures?
So I don't, it depends. So tell me, give me, and so now this is, Kelsey, you're sort of displaying something beautifully, right? That I do all the time, and that we as human beings do, which is, right, like it's the what if, right, the theoretical, right? We're going to take it and like, well, and I recommend that for this conversation, let's bring it to the court, right? So in the stands, so is there a particular scenario you're thinking about?
Yeah, I guess I was thinking about the conversation that my breakout group was having, and some of the different things that they mentioned as being like versions of inauthenticity, but it served them in their roles in the workplace. And so, you know, does that inauthenticity, you know, is that, you know, in this conversation something that you should be working to avoid, or can you lean into it and make it?
Got it. So now now I'm clear about your question. So here's how I'd answer that. So it depends on your aim, right? If your aim is to be a leader and exercise leadership effectively, it won't work, right? But if your aim is to, you know, like elevate yourself in a particular area, right? Then absolutely you should strive to prove yourself, right? So I want so that's one aspect of the answer. The other aspect of the answer is a little more nuanced, and you look for yourself to see if this is at work. You may not see it now, but maybe out in life today, tomorrow, you might see it. So every time that mechanism gets activated, right? That looking good mechanism, right? Oh, I'm going to do my admirable thing. Okay. Unfortunately, there's what I call a stowaway, like a stowaway demon that goes with it, which is that what you had to cover over to look good, you're reminded of that. So with the looking good, you are reminded of the thing you're trying to cover up. And ultimately, there's an ontological consequence to that, right? So that's the unfortunate piece about these winning formulas that we have, is they ultimately remind us of what went wrong that we created them, whether we're conscious of it or not. So that's how I'd answer that question, Kelsey. Is that close?
Yeah, thank you. That's great.
Good. I could do this all day, but Elisa will give me glares and chats. She's keeping my time for me. Thank you, Elisa. So we'll keep moving. And then if you have any, you know, write down if you have any more shares or questions about authenticity, we'll talk about it at the end. Thank you, Kelsey, Margarita. Very much. It takes something to say, to talk on a Zoom with 120 people. So take some courage. So I appreciate it. All right. Did our pull. Okay, and so here's the practice opportunity out there in life tomorrow. Right, this is not your life, what we're doing right now. This is not the court. Okay, we are actually in the stands looking at your life. Tomorrow or tonight, you'll be on the court of your life. And so this is a practice opportunity. Actually come clean, right? Hey, listen, I say I'm this, I'm pretending this. I'm really kind of, you know, I'm recommitting to being what I committed to in the first place. All right. All right, so now we'll go to our third foundational factor. It's called being given, being an action by something bigger than oneself. That's a mouthful. Like, why do you have to say it that, you know, it's so complicated, Kush. Why can't you just say, oh, you want to be part of something bigger? You know, like part of something greater, right? That's how we talk. I can't tell what being part of something greater looks like in life. It's theoretical. I can see somebody's being and acting as part of something bigger than themselves. And so that's why we word it that way, to keep us on the stance. I mean, keep us out of the stance. All right. So, well, okay, bigger than what self? Kush, this bigger than myself. All right. So we told you in the first session that leaders are just ordinary people like you and me. who have now done extraordinary things. They're ordinary people. They, you know, like I said, they fight with their spouses and their breath smells, and, you know, they're late on, you know, their library return, all those things, right? They're ordinary people. So what's the self I'm talking about? Well, I'm talking about a particular self, and we call this self the self you wound up being. Okay, and so I'll demonstrate what I mean. So Dylan, is there a way you are, like just a way you? Oh, you said loyal. You're loyal, right?
Oh, yes.
I am Dylan, and I am loyal. Okay, so now I want you to say it with wound up being instead of am. So
Okay. I am Dylan, and the way I wound up being is loyal.
there you go. That's right. So he is not loyal. He's just wound up being loyal, right? And that's good news. I see I gave you a lot of bad news. Here's some good news. Why is it good news? Well, if you wound up being this way, you can wind up being another way, right? Newsflash, you are not an immovable, unevolving rock, right? You are a human being that grows and develops in all sorts of directions. So you're not stuck with how you are. That's the good news. And so now I want you all to try this. Take a pen or pencil wherever you are, or Apple Pen. I am, right? Something you know, a word you use often to describe yourself. It doesn't have to be, you know, inspirational. You know, it can be like messy. Okay. Okay, now I want you to rewrite the same thing and hear yourself write it as you're writing it. Say, I wound up being X. All right. So there's a qualitative difference between the two, right? And so when you find yourself amming in life tomorrow, next week, I am this, I am that. Try and do I wound up being. All right? And there's some freedom in it. All right. So that self you wound up being is the self I'm talking about. And so let's move to the question of this. Okay, now what the bigger thing? Okay, we talked about the self. What's this bigger than? What is your life about? Like, ask yourself, like right now, inquire. What's about? What's your career about? What's your schooling been about? What's your relationships about? What's it all about? Okay. So now, as you're inquiring, what is this all about? Let's have this conversation. So, great leaders are not extraordinary people, right? They're just regular old people, right? However, here's why they appear extraordinary to us, right? Is because we hear about them after they've done great things, right? Right? After they've gotten there, pretty extraordinary people. So, and here's what's worse, right? It took something for them to be bigger than who they wound up being. And you will find in life that it takes something to go beyond who you wound up being. So to say that, well, no, they're just extraordinary, it actually demeans what it took for them to go beyond who they wound up being, right? But what's more important is that way of thinking, right? Oh, I mean, that's just an extraordinary person, right? That's not me, right? It puts some distance between you and that extraordinary leader, right? And completely conceals your access to being, like, to doing extraordinary things, right? So, and that is, it's almost like, I might go so far as to say, well, it's the cop-out, right? It allows you to play safe, right? Well, you're not that. You're going to let the extraordinary people go make all the difference in the world, right? You're just going to, do the thing your life has been about. All right. So, okay. So how am I going to do this? How is this done? This creating one's life about being about something bigger than oneself than about the thing it's been about. And, I assert that when you inquired, the thing it's been about is some version of me, right? It's been about you. It hasn't been about something bigger than you. It's been about you. Okay. So what is it going to be about, right? Going forward, from this day forward, what is it going to be about, right? I invite you to take a stand for something bigger than your concerns for yourself. Right? For sure, bigger than these things, right? Those are some of the usuals, right? That things that have us do relationships, do career, do school, do life, right? And how do you know you've taken a stand? How do you know you've taken a stand? Well, if you're willing to give your life for it, you can be certain it's a stand, right? I mean, there may be other things that are stands, right? But for certain, you'll know it's a stand if you're willing to give your life for it, or really put something on the line, put something really on the line. So I love the name of this slide. It sounds very ominous. We're going to talk about the valley of the shadow of death. Talk about bad news.
Don't scare them away, Koosh.
Yeah. Okay. So it's going to happen. I guarantee you, in a leadership situation, you're going to face times of being massively thwarted. And the bigger the game, the bigger the thwart. Right? You can be left with a sense of hopelessness, imposter syndrome. They got the wrong person doing this. Nobody's coming. I got nothing left. Like we say these, right? I got nothing left. You're gonna hit these moments, right? Where you're going to want to quit, right? Every great leader has wanted to quit. I recommend, don't wait till that happens, right? To figure out what's gonna get you through those times, right? It's really stressful when you're there. It's actually not the time to be creative, right? Do it now, right? Find that thing now, that purpose, right? That it's all about, whatever it is, the bigger than you, right? It's usually too late when you're actually in the situation, right? And I mean, you might be somebody that enjoys sort of putting on your parachute after you've jumped out of the plane, right? And if you're that kind of person, then don't worry about this. But if you're somebody who'd like to have your parachute on as you jump off, I recommend you find your purpose now. But first things first, this is not, you cannot just say, oh, it's all about equity. Really, that's what this is all about, right? You cannot plop that on top of the way you wound up being. We call that positive thinking. And it really doesn't go anywhere. You actually have to have the way you wound up being rest. You have to complete it. All right? So first, you're going to have to be really ruthlessly honest with yourself about what it's been about. Right? And there's nothing wrong with what it's been about. Right? Okay, yeah, it's been about me. It's been about me, and like I was working class family's kid. And Dylan, you know, the thing that you say about money. Like, what's the thing you say about money?
Oh, I mean, I grew up in East Texas, very humble. My dad was a small town minister. My mom was a part-time school teacher. You know, I had this wonderful, like Mark Twain sort of barefoot BB gun. It was, you know, on the one hand, it was a really wonderful childhood. On the other hand, you know, it was used cars and campground vacations. And the only time I ever saw mom and dad really fight was about money stuff. So when it was time for me, you know, when I graduated college and nobody wanted to hire me, I got to get a grad degree. And I chose business, not because it called to me, but because I thought, well, that'll fix it.
The money thing, yeah.
The money thing. Like the one thing that my dad never seemed to master seemed to be money. Therefore, which degree teaches you about money? It wasn't a calling. I didn't particularly have a passion for it. I didn't even know what it was. I showed up first day of grad school like, hey, what's going on here? It was totally inauthentic. It wasn't, it was a very young choice.
But that's what it was about when you started, right? Yeah. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. There's nothing wrong, right? It just what was, right? And a mentor of ours who has developed a lot of this work says, if you let it be, it will let you be, right? Just let it be. That's what it's been about. Okay. Then, so do that, right? Like those of you that sort of have come to like, okay, it's been about, yeah, I can see it's been about this, right? Just get clear about it and make it okay. You're human, all right? Then do that first, let it rest, and then get clear and start sharing about what the purpose is of all of this. So your access to being a leader is creating everything in your life, right? There's power that comes from an aligned life. Have it be about something that calls you forth, right? And it would require you being unrecognizable to yourself, i.e., not who you wound up being, right? So access to being a leader is what you stand for. All right, so we're gonna go into a breakout session. Okay, so, you know, just what has it been about, right? Share with your group what it's been about. It's far more helpful to get this stuff dealt with in dialogue than it is in monologue, which is part of why we put you in breakout sessions. What are the ways you wound up being, right? However, what does your grad degree, right? Your choice to attend grad school at UCLA, what is it that might give you access to your being in action, being bigger than yourself, right? Or what could you make it? Right? Yeah. Okay. We're ready for breakouts.
We'll have 10 minutes in the breakout this time.
All right.
All right. 10 minutes, everybody. Please keep your eye on the time.
They've been closed. They'll start to trickle back in.
Wow, I still have 2 polls left. Are we going to have time for these?
We can stop we can not do the last one if you'd like.
Well, no, it's your choice.
It doesn't take that long to do them.
Okay, all right. And I'll do them quick. I'll tell
Yeah, and then we can just not have the last one if needed.
Okay, yeah. It's available but not requisite.
Yep.
Thank you, Ryan, for keeping us on time, and Elisa.
No problem.
And Dylan, you can put up the poll already, perhaps. I don't know.
Will it let me do that?
As they're coming back.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
Excuse me, my alarm is going off. All right. So it gives me this little drop down. Question number 3, being given, being. So I gave them 3 choices. Do they want to work on COVID, our police and justice system, or on our democratic institutions, if they were to be given being by something bigger?
All right. Well, let's see if they had to choose.
I think this poll is the prior poll, the one that I'm seeing at least.
Right.
Oh, I think it'll trigger the new one when I turn it on.
Oh, got it. Okay.
I don't see what you're seeing, so I think there's a lag.
Yeah, we're just seeing the second poll, Dylan. So, I mean, you can open the poll. You can launch it. People can.
Do I need to explain it or just launch it?
Just launch it.
Mhm.
Do you see?
Mm-hmm.
Being given. If you're being given, being in action.
All right, so welcome back. So these are possibly, one could say, the big 3 that our society is facing right now. This pandemic, COVID-19, the policing and justice system, and where it's gone off the rails is number 2. And then looking forward to the fall, we're going to have a nationwide election. So if you were to choose, which one might you choose? There's lots of other things in life. These were just 3 examples. All right, 90% have voted. 10 seconds. 94%, 95%. All right. Ending polling, sharing results.
All right.
Can you see that, Kush?
I can. Contributing to the workability in our democratic institutions is first. Then justice and policing is second, and COVID is third. Very good. Interesting. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for being polled. We're going to keep going. We're not going to do shares right now. We're going to take it all at the end, just so we can make up a little time. We're going to talk about our last fundamental, right? And I'll bring back the analogy that these, if this were basketball, right? These would be your being able to shoot a hoop, do a layup, do a free throw, and dribble. Right? I mean, you have to be able to do these things if you're going to play basketball. There's other stuff, right, that you should, that's fancier stuff that you'll end up doing, but you got to be able to do those things. And so if you're going to be a leader, there's fancier stuff, but you got to be able to do these 4 things, be these 4 things. All right. So we're going to talk about being cause in the matter. Right? All right. So what are we talking about when we say cause in the matter? What matter? Well, the situation with which you are dealing. That's the matter I'm talking about. And while it's not the whole story, how you react to the situation you're dealing with, right, rather than the situation itself, is what's critical to being a leader. Right? You have no control over how the situation is. Zip. None. What you have control over is how you relate to it. Right? So, if you are not a direct cause of something, right, like the rain, right, like if you didn't make the rain happen, you are by default at effect of the rain. Right? If you're not a cause, right, cause of something, you're at effect of it. Okay. At the very least, and you hear people saying this, right? I had no choice. All right. That's still being at effect. Right? Now you're just at effect of the situation and not having a choice. Right? You're still at effect. So perhaps the opposite of being effect, right? Or the opposite of not being able to cause is power, right? Power is able to cause what happens. I say, I need a chair, right? And wow, a chair just shows up. Like somebody runs in on the chair, right? Essentially. It's almost like the chair fell out of my mouth, right? That's power. So, and to the degree you're in effect, you lack power. Again, back to our positive normative thing, right? There's no metal, right? If you're at cause and not at effect, right? It just means you lack power. You don't have sufficient power to achieve the results you want with velocity. Well, and turns out, ironically, it's the situations where you don't have power, right? Or your experience of not having power would be the ones where you need it the most. Why does it always work out that way? And if you're at effect, and you talk like you're at effect, you are unlikely to be effective in your exercise of leadership, right? All right, so I'm not making an assertion here. I'm making a declaration about this cause and the matter business, all right? So an assertion is a statement about the facts, right? It's what's the facts of the matter. Whereas a declaration, and in this case, the declaration that I am cause in the matter, is a choice from which to view the facts, right? So asserting is some statement about the facts, and a declaration is a choice or a stand from which to view those facts. So I'm not making an assertion that you're cause in the matter, like it's a fact. It's actually not true. Epistemologically, scientifically, third person verifiable, you did not make it rain. You did not make the country be in the position it's in now, right? Right. However, I am making a declaration, right? I'm giving you a place to stand from which to view the facts of the situation with which you're confronted, okay? So this is a declaration. I'm causing the matter. So one rabbit hole or pitfall with the whole cause of the matter business, right, is that it starts to occur to people when you say, hey, you're causing the matter, it becomes now something like it's your fault, or you can take credit for it, or blame. Causing the matter, I did it. It's not what we're talking about. I'm not talking about any of these, good or bad. Right? That is not being cause in the matter, being ashamed, like being cause in the matter. It doesn't really focus on who at all, right? Who's at fault? Who made it happen? Who should be rewarded? In fact, when you talk like that as a leader, right, it conveys no power, right? You're disempowering yourself. So an example I like to use is, okay, so parallel realities. We're going to Best Buy with our masks on, okay? Going to Best Buy, something didn't go the way, something didn't go the way it was supposed to. You called manager, right? The manager comes, you say, you know what? This was delivered to me broken. And the manager says, oh man, that delivery service that we're using, they've been doing this a lot. I'm sorry that happened, right? One reality. Another reality, same situation. Now the manager says, you know what? That is not the way we like our customers to have experience. That's not the experience we like our customers to have. And we're going to make it right. Here's my proposal. Which leader conveys more power? Not the one that blamed the delivery service, because then who's in control? The delivery service, not you, right? All right. So, turns out, if you look at it as a declaration, there actually isn't anything you can't be causing the matter of. Anything. That Democrat, what the thing you chose when we asked you about, COVID or the democratization or justice, all right? You'd be causing the matter on any of that. Because it's not a conclusion based on observation. It doesn't live in that world. It's just a stand. It's a stand you take, and that stand then provides a context. Those of you that were here in session 1 creates a powerful context. So the facts or what's happening occurs to you sort of in a new world, and new possibilities for action become apparent, right? So what does cause and the matter look like? Here's one, I'll give you an example from my life. So I happen to be somebody who didn't like the way the last election went, okay? There are people that liked the way it went, and there are people that didn't like the way it went. I was one of the people who didn't like the way it went, right? And I asked myself, geez, how am I causing the matter of this? Am I causing the matter of this election going the way it went? When I asked, I voted, right? I'm not really causing the matter, right? But when I asked that question, when I stood there, I could see, hang on a second, Uncle Randy. Uncle Randy, in our family, right? It's Uncle Randy. He has the education he has the viewpoints he has, right? And those of us that are educated tend to look down on Uncle Randy, right? Or his sort of backwoods views. Guess what? All the Uncle Randys voted. And I can see that if I start with Uncle Randy, right, I could perhaps have this go a different way another time, right, with all the Uncle Randy. So that's what I mean. Like something, like if I ask myself the question, like something else becomes possible. No. Where are we? Okay, it's our last breakout. Okay, so now we're bringing it back to grad school. Not like the truth, but what can you be causing the matter of regarding grad school and grad school preparation, right? And say it like a declaration, right? And peers, like when you're hearing it, like you give feedback about whether it sounds like a declaration or an assertion. Okay.
All right, Ryan, we send them away, and how many minutes will they be gone?
Have 10 minutes.
Okay, 10 minutes, everyone. I'm loving this because I'm putting faces with a lot of people I've spoken with on the phone. I see Katrina, I see Hawkins. I'm having fun.
All right, looks like we have sort of critical mass.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. All right. So we are at the end here. I'm going to give you a couple of practice opportunities with regard to these last two modules, and then I'm just going to recap. Put it all together, and then we'll spend the rest of the time on Q&A. All right. So here's one practice opportunity. Right. Take one or all of your recommenders to coffee. Right, those that wrote your recommendation letters, and thank them, and maybe share with them your declaration about what this is all going to be about. Right, but make a big difference for them. And then another one is, Dylan always says, well, it's about academic probation in the first quarter, right? When he counsels people who are about to or on academic probation, it's never because they weren't smart enough or hardworking enough or any of those things in that list, right? It's because they didn't have some supports around for when it got tough. And it always does get tough. Grad school is adding an entire, like it's a new life to your life. So choose 3 people, ideally a family member, a friend or colleague, and when you've gotten clear about what's in it for them that you're getting this degree at UCLA, right? What's in it for them? Share that with them and see what that creates. All right, those are the practice opportunities. We're not going to do this poll. All right, so put it all together for you. So there you see, you know, there's our word cloud again. That's the word cloud that you all completed when you were, well, you completed by registering and putting in the attributes of leaders you respected. Right. And so I'll go back to why we started these leadership labs in the first place, right? Because we wanted you to lead yourself to the best and most unrecognizable first quarter of grad school, right? The most best, most unrecognizable quarter of school that you've had to date, right? How can you lead yourself to that? Because then that will be practice for leading others to anything. Okay, we talked about, all right, so then what makes extraordinary leaders? How can I be extraordinary in leading myself? Right, let's start there. Well, perhaps what makes these extraordinary leaders, we talked about, maybe it's not so much about what you know, all right, the technical aspects of life. Perhaps it's about how you see or interpret or process the world, right? And the way you see what's really going on is you live life on the court, right? Where the game of life is actually being played rather than in the stands where the game of life is being observed and talked about, right? It's kind of like in sports. You've got the people playing the game and their conversation is about action. And then you've got the people in the stands who are cheering, booing, giving prescriptions, deciding on what to pay attention to and what not to pay attention to, right? That's the stands. Where you're going to be leading is actually on the court. And then we talked about the power of context, which is related to how you see. Context is a lens that shapes a situation for you. And there are default contexts, one that you've inherited that come along with any situation. Every situation comes with a context, whether you're aware of it or not. And there are some default ones, but then there are ones that you create. And to the degree that your created context is powerful, the actions and the exercises of leadership that follows from that are more powerful, right? Powerful context, powerful leadership. Okay, and we spent the last two sessions talking about our 4 fundamentals: integrity, which is honoring your word as yourself, right? Not keeping it, honoring it as yourself, and cleaning it up when you don't, because there's going to be times where you don't. That's integrity. Authenticity, being and acting, being consistent with who you hold yourself out to be, being given your way of being and your acting by something bigger than yourself, and being cause in the matter. Okay, and I want to leave you with this, which is consider that leadership is a practice, right? It's not a role, it's not authority, that's not what we're talking about. You need authority, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about leadership. We're also not talking about management, right? Competent management is needed when you've got a plan and it needs to get executed on time, on budget, with quality. Right? That's when competent management is needed, okay? When the path forward is not clear, there's no agreement, there's no precedent, there's no answer, that's when you need leadership, all right? You don't want to confuse the two. You don't want to lead when only management, like when management is leading, and you don't want to manage when only leadership is needed, right? Likely situations need both, but right now, in the situation our country finds ourselves in, a lot of leadership is needed because there's no answers, right? And so maybe think about leadership as leaderness, right? What does your leaderness look like in this situation? Or leadering, right, as a verb. Like, what does leadering look like? And holding it like that gives anyone access to being a leader and exercising leadership in any situation, right? And I'm going to give you the definition of leadership It's an exercise in language which creates a future that wasn't going to happen anyway. Which future fulfills the concerns of the relevant parties such that those relevant parties see a way to make a noteworthy contribution to that future. That's it. Anybody can do that in any leadership situation. That's it. You can open it up for questions. And I know some of my team have to leave right at 7:30, so I can stay on a little bit, but thank you all, those of you that had to leave. This has been really wonderful putting this all together. So I know there's some questions in the chat too. So folks can raise their hands.
Greg, would you like to unmute yourself and share your question?
Sure. Hello. Thank you so much for this series. It's been really informative. I'm just curious about the emphasis on not defining integrity and authenticity and the four qualities you mentioned as good or bad. It seems like we're saying that they have good outcomes, and the absence of these things lead to not as good outcomes. So it would seem on its face that they are having these things, authenticity, integrity, a purpose, are good. So I'm just wondering why we're sort of, it seems like you've gone out of your way to say, nah, it's not, they're neither good nor bad.
What I'm trying to do, Greg, is take it out of the realm of morality, right? So it works better, right? It works better if a leader displays those ways of being and acting, right? There's just more power to that situation, right? So that's what I would say, is it works better. I wouldn't say it's good or bad. Now, I mean, you could say it's splitting hairs and semantics, and it's just words, but words are very important, right? They create the world. Languages, so it's nuanced, but that the minute you put it in morality, right? Like when there's a right or wrong, people get defensive, people check themselves out. So that's why we try and keep it out of the realm of morality. Gravity, but thinking about gravity will always save you. Like, it's just like gravity. I mean, you just need to account for it. And life won't work if you don't account for gravity. I promise you. That's how I'd answer that, Greg.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jackie Irvine here. Hi.
Hi.
Would you, just kind of extending on that, would you maybe then say it's not necessarily a moral thing, but it's more of a being thing. And when we consider it as good, it's not necessarily good, but means to an end. Like authenticity as almost the strategy, and then how you practice that as the tactics in order to accomplish good leadership is sort of from a business perspective, that's kind of how I've seen it. And so it's not necessarily is that kind of an accurate way of putting it? It's not necessarily good or bad, but a means to an end.
Yes, and effective. Like you can have more or less effective means to ends, right? There's just nothing moral about something being effective or not effective.
Yeah,
it just is or it isn't. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. I like the strategy tactics thing. I may use that, Jackie.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Very good. Any others?
Yeah, hi, how's it going? My name is Michael. I had a question on the chat.
Sure.
I was wondering how authenticity is similar or different to humility. I just couldn't help but thinking, as you were talking through authenticity the entire time, I was thinking like most of those are acts of humility. And so I'm wondering if you could help me parse through the similarities or differences.
It's a really good question. Dylan actually read to me earlier. Here's how I'd answer it. Humility is the result of authenticity, right? So that's usually what results, right? And that's what people like. That's what makes you human with people, right? So it's not the same thing. So when you are authentic about your inauthenticities, what comes across the people, one of the things that can come across the people is humility, right? And how would you define humility?
Yeah, when I think about humility, you know, I really think about like owning one's mistakes, taking ownership of, you know, things that are like you said, like things that may make you not look good, or, you know, it's owning. I really think it does center around owning mistakes, and I guess you can be authentic in ways that, you know, aren't necessarily mistakes.
Absolutely, yeah. And this is, you know, this is where I usually, if I were not sharing my screen, be looking up define humility, right? Because that's the other thing we get caught in here. Like, what you mean by humility, right, is not likely what somebody else means by humility. You think you're talking about the same thing, but you're not. So, but that's how I would. If humility is being I don't know, Dylan, somebody look it up. What is it? I just can't do it.
All right,
Jill
give me
could look it up too.
a modest or low view of one's own importance, humbleness.
Right. So what it is, then that makes sense, right? So you're not holding yourself out to be any different than any other human being that has foibles and flaws and makes mistakes, right? So that's humility. And that's what comes across when you're authentic about your inauthenticities, is how I would answer that question, Michael.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
And in
Hey, this is Michael.
Hi, Michael.
Hey, everybody. And I put it in the chat as well, and it's I probably phrased it wrong. What would you say is who or examples of quote good or quote great leaders? I know not necessarily from a moral perspective, because that's what I know you're trying to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
From a kind of they walk the walk, talk the talk. I don't know. Just like if you could give some examples and that would be really helpful, I think, for a lot of folks.
Are you what program are you in, Michael?
Uh-oh, I'm in trouble now.
No, it's okay. Gonzalo. There, right. The person that Dylan and Sarika report to.
Yep.
If you watch him, there you go.
Perfect.
So that's some, and you know, like, I'm gonna not say that, you know, like, I try to stay away from answers like Gandhi or Mandela, you know, or MLK. I mean, obviously great leaders, obviously created new futures that people lived into. However, right, that sometimes takes, like, people just, like, that's not accessible for people, right? So that's why, like, you know, your parents, right, are likely have displayed leadership, right? So it's not our leader, but displayed leadership in certain situations, right? You could say I was a leader in this conversation, right? I created a future that wasn't going to happen anyway, right? Y'all had a particular way you were viewing leadership, and you would have attended grad school the way you were viewing leadership. And now you have at least choice about a new way to view it. That's leadership. Right?
Yeah,
really helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
You know, the created context I could put on, I'm an admissions dean. My job is to get people to orientation. That's one way to live life. There's nothing wrong with that. But who you all are to me is you are the people who are going to build the future that my children get to live into. My kids are going to get hired by people on this call. My kids are going to go to hospitals that are run by people on this Zoom. You know, my grandchildren are going to inherit a health system built by people on this Zoom. It's a declaration. I declare that's what I'm doing with my life. I'm building a better world, and you all are my access to that commitment coming true. Because I can't do it. I'm just one little guy. But if I can remind a generation of entering students that UCLA is one of the most magical places on the planet, with 125 separate graduate programs plus the most applied to undergraduate student body. If I can open up a world where you all are, in addition to being future doctors, future public health leaders, and future managers, in addition to that, you're also aware of, oh, additionally, I'm a citizen of UCLA, of Los Angeles, of California, of the United States, of the world, and my voice matters. That's just a bigger world to live in. It's not good or bad. There's just power. It gets me out of bed in the morning. I get up at 4:45 every morning. I love my life. I want to go work from home for the next whatever period of time and help contribute to a better world, right? So but I do that in partnership with Elisa, with Liz, with Sarika, with Kush, as a creation, versus, just going to work and doing admissions again.
And going through the motions. That's what we do. Heidegger calls it tranquilized obviousness, right? And we're just giving, you don't have to go through the motions. Yeah, you create something. Dylan, I don't know what we have in the chat and with questions.
I think you have one more person, and I'm Janathy, you raised your hand.
Please.
Yeah, so coming to the humility thing, so in my experience, and I've also had bosses where I had all kinds of bosses. So I've seen that when we actually are very humble, sometimes we're taken for granted by our peers and then people we work with, or sometimes they feel they can say anything and get away with it because we're just trying to be nice, and that's where we have to have we have to be assertive to a point. At the same time, balance it out, where I believe in collaborative leadership style. So I want to incorporate all that. At the same time, I don't want to be people take me for granted and do what they want and say what they want and walk away. So it's the fine balance is kind of hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a great thing to be grappling with, particularly for me as a woman and a woman of color, right? You got to be there's a particular way I have to carry myself, right? And modesty, right, sometimes isn't what's gonna rule the day. The way I'd start to talk about what you're looking at, Janti, is what's in that particular situation, right? Think of a situation, right, where that happened, right? Where you were humble, right? And now here somebody goes giving somebody else the promotion or whatever that is, right? What is your aim in going ahead and not being humble, right? So there's a future that you're in service of as a leader, right? And if being modest, that's why I didn't want to completely collapse it, right, with authenticity. If being modest isn't going to get that future into focus, then that's not what there is to do. And I think we get into this well, now I'm gonna it's a way of living. These four fundamentals are just a way of living life, right? But in a leadership situation, you got to do what the situation calls for. That's why you have to be able to see, without any of your junk in the way. If you can actually see what's going on, it becomes really obvious what leadership is needed, right? If you go in saying, well, I'm this kind of leader, so I always do this, you're gonna miss what the situation calls for, right? And so if the situation doesn't call for modesty or what humility, right? Because it's not going to create a future that wasn't going to happen, I wouldn't use it. That's one way to start to talk about this.
I have a thing too, just that made me think.
Hey, Nicole.
Hi. Oh, and really quick, I just want to let you know, thank you guys for the motivation from the last time I showed up for myself. I got an A- in that class.
Very
and I was
nice.
literally, every time I was like, do I go on a run or do I study? I study? I was thinking about all you guys. I was like, I've got to just be, you know, anyway, so I did it.
Very good.
There you go.
Yeah. Thank you. But what I was just thinking, you know, with all of this, and especially that situation, also being a female and a female of color, or whatever it is, I literally, authentic and like being authentic has been the best thing. And sometimes being authentic means that it doesn't sound like there's a lot of humility, but I'm like, authentically, you know what, I worked my face off and I'm going to show up to this meeting, and it's not going to be because I'm bringing my ego. It's because I worked my face off, and now I'm going to sit in this meeting and y'all have to listen to this piece, and this is how I'm going to be a leader. And this is sometimes like, I think when we think that we should make a choice to be modest, we're not being authentic, because we are then at that point, if we're just being authentic, we're being ourselves. If we're coming with integrity, we're also coming with integrity as who we are, and what that also brings. So just being, I feel like having to bring that as a female, it makes it to where it's like, I don't have to put on I'm a female and I have to be or act a certain way. I'm just going to show up as myself, and hopefully that works. And that just feels so much better, right? And so that's
really good, Nicole. You know, Jayanti, what she's pointing to is like a situation where, let's say it's like, you know what, I'm acting like I'm really stupid. Truth of the matter is, look, I've got this and I can run circles around it. And I've been acting like I'm stupid, just so, you know, for whatever reason, you know, so I don't have to take responsibility or whatever that is. So it can go the opposite way too. The result of that is not humility of that one, but it's still authenticity. Very good, Nicole.
So just one thing I want to mention.
Yeah.
When I say humility, when I say being humble, the point I'm trying to make is that, you know, when I work in a group, I make sure that everybody feels important. It's like, it's not like that only my view is the most important, or I'm the most important person. I make sure everybody feels important, because I feel that's when you get the best out of them. And that's what I mean by being humble, because in a way you're letting someone else, you know, sometimes take the lead and come out with their best.
Absolutely.
And people do. The moment you say something good about anybody, they're just going to give the best. I feel like everybody wants that. Who wants to hear what's bad about us, right? So it kind of maybe like ties into that. So
it does. And so that works in most situations. But watch this. Okay, imagine we were all in the room. Actually, we weren't on Zoom, and we were all at Anderson, right, in a room, and there's a fire. Collaborative leadership is not what's needed when there's a fire. When there's a fire, the leadership needed is commanding leadership, right? Because that's what's going to create the future that wasn't going to happen anyway. Because the future that was going to happen anyway is we all die. Right? So you have to be able to diagnose what the situation calls for, or you will miss the mark. And you'll be mystified as to why you missed the mark. You missed the mark because you weren't dealing with the situation. You were dealing with your picture of the situation. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Jayanti.
Well, Kush, on behalf of all of us, I know you have 3 little ones and a partner waiting in the other part of your home. You know, I just want to say, you know, thank you for being our leader, because we can't have this conversation without your contribution of your expertise and your passion and your commitment and your set of distinctions. So thank you so much for gifting the David Geffen School of Medicine. I keep saying management.
The David Geffen School of Management.
Well, maybe he should give us a gift too. Come on, David, show some love over here. and the Fielding School of Public Health and the Anderson School of Management, for all 5 programs who've been on all 3 of these. And for all of you who stayed here to the extra Q&A, thank you all. If you'd like to listen to the first 2, they are recorded. And when Sarika sends the feedback, we'd love your feedback. This is the 2nd year we've done this. Last year it was only 1 program. It was just my students and Kush and myself, and now we've expanded. So we're learning, we're experimenting, and we'd love your feedback. And the links will also be there. But on behalf of all of us, Kush, just thank you for walking the walk and talking the talk and giving us some access to leaderness and leading ourselves.
Leaderness and leadering.
Leadering.
You're welcome. And y'all, you know where, it's very easy to find me. So if ever, and I can talk about this stuff forever. So just come find me and we'll chat if there's something you're grappling with.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a wonderful evening, all.